Okay, welcome to another episode of This Week in Hearing, a show where we discuss the innovation and happenings occurring within the hearing healthcare space, the hearable space, the audio space, really anything that touches those that work with the state of audio. And today I'm joined by Andy Bellavia and James Fielding. So before we jump into what we're going to be talking about today, why don't we allow them to introduce themselves one by one? We'll start with you, Andy.
Thank you, Dave. Always a pleasure to be on with you. I'm Andy Bellavia, Director of Market Development for Knowles Corp. I work in the Hearing Health Tech Division, and I'm actually responsible for everything in-ear, which is not a regulated hearing aid. So professional musician in-ear monitors, radio communications earpieces, and hearable devices are under my responsibility. And I'm looking forward to having a really good conversation with James about the latest findings from Qualcomm on hearable devices.
Awesome. And James.
Yeah, James Fielding. I'm the founder and managing director of Audeara. We make the world's healthiest headphones that have a built-in hearing personalization feature to tailor the sound to your individual hearing profile. We partner alongside audiology clinics here in Australia. I'm in Brisbane, Australia right now, and really looking forward to having one of our awesome conversations recorded this time for other people to share.
That's great. Well, thank you two very much for joining. As Andy alluded to, the topic for today is going to be around Qualcomm's most recent state of sound report. So they put these annual reports out where they do a whole lot of consumer surveys, gathering information on the appetite for, the coming features of different, audio devices and other Qualcomm powered devices. And this one is very specific to audio. So I thought that as I was looking through it, I always like to have my right-hand man on here with Andy. He's been on all of This Week in Hearing episodes with me. But I thought that James would be a perfect fit as our third, because as I was reading through it, the thing that really jumped out at me is that two things were really, really apparent from this. With the next generation of devices, the consumer appetite seems to be very much geared toward HD audio and sound and personalized enhancement. So sound enhancement and personalized enhancement, this ability to customize the way that the sound is actually output from your headphones. And so given that that's what Audeara is really designed to do, James, I figure we'll start with you. Kind of give us a breakdown of how maybe Audeara came to be, the insight that you had, and the way that you're thinking about your product, your company, in light of these Qualcomm findings.
Yeah, thanks. So we came out of medical school. I'm a medical doctor by trade. I was on my way to be a surgeon and did an MBA during medical school. And we originally came out to try and solve the problem of access to hearing health information. And once we had solved that riddle around how do we get a personalized piece of hearing information in front of each user, we figured, let's actually take a step to change some behavior. Because as we found, showing people a result is one thing, but if you can provide them an incredible experience that's going to change their behavior in a really positive way, that's the focus of where you should be driving your attention. And our entire ethos is your headphones are trying to play sound for you. Can you actually hear it? Because to date, technology has been based on transducers and wiring and battery life and noise cancelling and how much nickel is in your connectors and all these types of things, which are super interesting, it's super technical and super audiophile. But the piece that was getting left out of the equation was the person listening. Because when it comes down to can you hear this, you have to get it all the way in through the ear to the brain and say, I am having this experience. So we said, let's focus on that part. And instead of guessing what great headphones should sound like, let's just ask you what your hearing is like and then tailor it so you're getting the best possible experience. And with this report with Qualcomm, we use Qualcomm chips to do what we do, but we strip the guts out and we put our personalization engine in there. And it's a really amazing platform. And these state of sound reports are always really interesting because we get a forward look and we get advanced access to some of this technology. And the idea that people are looking for sound enhancement, sound personalization, these are terms that weren't there 5-6 years ago. And so it was really exciting to see that and see this progression to people really paying attention to sound. And I know we're going to get into the COVID argument and use, but that was the really key takeaway for me, that we're talking about sound quality, but we're talking about that final piece of the puzzle, sound quality for the individual listener, which is where we shine and where the future of hearing technology is going.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of trends going here that you hit on, James, which are really causing us to converge on, the hearables convergence with hearing aids and how people use hearable devices in different situations. I think COVID did have something to do with it because people are having conversations in different environments than they used to and are becoming more aware of the shortcomings of their devices. So, for example, ANC, when you look at the State of Play report, the likely impact of advanced features on true wireless earbud purchase, ANC was at the top of the list. Why? Because people were working at the dining room table with, kids playing nearby, this sort of thing. But then you also have hearing enhancement and hearing personalization popping up much higher than it ever did before. If you're spending more time with meetings or listening to podcasts, entertainment, you come to realize that hearing personalization is important. It's part of the enjoying the experience or being able to understand people better. I think in a way, this is really good for the breakdown of the hearing loss stigma, that 60% of the people, a number higher than when you and I talked even a few months ago, Dave, 60% of the people say hearing personalization is a feature that will, influence their purchase of their next device. And then along with that, very high on the list is HD audio. As the people are listening more, they want higher quality listening. And there's also a boost from the music streaming services, whom in the last few months have all announced HD services. And in the case of Apple and Amazon, at no extra charge. So now we don't know what Spotify is going to do yet because they haven't released theirs, but you now have 2 to 3 top services giving HD audio away compared to standard. So everybody's become aware of the availability at no extra cost of a better music listening experience, which feeds into what you're doing also, because if I'm going to listen to HD music, I want to hear it as the artist intended. And so if I'm getting a little treble boost through my personalization, more power to me. So I think the trends are all coming along very nicely to have a device which is usable in any circumstance and, therefore gives you kind of this ambient listening experience wherever you are, or conversation experience, if you will.
Yeah, and I think it ties in really nicely what you were saying there about the different situations and the different use cases that you need in different situations. And I think this hearable piece and that transition from hearing aid, hearable, headphone, it's not a one case fits all type scenario. There's going to be need for different products in different areas. And I think people are more accustomed to using different products to meet their different needs as well, which is a really important part of the technology improving.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things that you both said that really stand out to me. Obviously the pandemic has played a big part in this. It's accelerated everything. It's made it more apparent that, we all are working in a remote world that is, you're always sort of tethered to your work in a way where, whether it's a Zoom call or some sort of remote interaction that you have. And I just think that, it's already apparent through a lot of the sales data that, hearables and true wireless headphones were a big pandemic beneficiary. A lot of people opted to upgrade into higher quality audio devices. And I think that what's interesting to your point, Andy, is that you now see people starting to have this demand for more advanced features as they wear these things for longer periods of time. They want the music to sound better, so they want HD audio. They're, maybe in the type of person that has a hearing loss. So they want some type of hearing enhancement for their digital acoustic environment. This is no longer something that's, where I think historically hearing aids in particular have been positioned for your ambient acoustic environments. We're now talking about a world where you need to be able to interface with both your digital acoustic environment and your ambient acoustic environment. And so I think that all of this lends itself to this idea that like consumption is going up, more usage is going up. And therefore I think it's becoming more apparent in the consumer's eyes that these features exist, what's on the horizon for them. And therefore, I think that's what this report is really telling us. And again, going back to this whole idea of, hearing enhancement in Audeara, something that has gone through my mind a lot is this whole question of, if you are someone that has a hearing loss, James, how's the way that you sort of position Audeara as a complementary device to that rather than the hearing aid being the end all be all? Speak to maybe the advantages that something like your device has for somebody that is experiencing the world that we live in today with a hearing loss.
Well, the biggest one for us is that positioning as complementary, where an as well as type product or an on your way to a hearing aid type product, which gives us a great relationship with the clinics. And I think the simplistic fact is that by utilizing Bluetooth, by utilizing core headphone technology, and then adding the personalization to that, you get the versatility and the simplicity of connecting to different devices in your different environments. So you can have your TV connected for the TV, then you're on your laptop, direct stream to your laptop, your phone rings, you enter your phone. That seamless connectivity piece that is also doing the tailoring to meet your individual hearing needs. And so we see ourselves as a really great complementary product for people who know they have a hearing loss and are seeking a solution and are aware that that solution comes in different form factors for different needs. And it's a really fascinating time as more and more people come to realize that.
Yeah, and no company less than Sonova actually backs up what you just said. I've got their latest Investor Day presentation in front of me, and they have a chart that shows the continuum of the consumer journey, in which there's premium and audiophile headphones, then there's hearables with amplification, then there's hearing aids, and then there's cochlear implants, on an axis that shows your journey going one way and the need for amplification going the other. And so what you have is a series of overlaps. And I would say even in my case, where I'm in severe hearing loss territory, so I really need a correction just to hear people. At the same time, the music experience through hearing aids isn't the greatest. That's going to change over time, but it isn't the greatest. And so when I want to listen to music, I would use, a personalized headphone for better music quality. But then when I'm out and about and talking to people in person, I would use my hearing aids. And so I'll switch devices in and out according to the situation. And if you're in mild to mid category, a device like yours is perfect. I get the best audio quality possible, personalized for my own hearing. And the other interesting thing about the Sonova report is it's very similar to Qualcomm's. Now, they're a hearing health company. Granted, they just bought Sennheiser, but they look at it through a hearing health lens versus a consumer product lens. But they did a similar survey. They actually broke it in half with consumers without hearing loss and consumers with hearing loss, results separated. But the results are almost identical. In their survey, they have wearing comfort as number one. It was very high on the list in Qualcomm's, but not number one. And then hi-fi sound quality is number two. And so whether your lens is a hearing health company or your lens is a consumer products company, hi-fi sound quality, HD audio, a good listening experience is coming up at the top of all the lists. And so it's a combination of being able to deliver HD sound in the first place and also being able to personalize it so everybody can enjoy the same experience.
Yeah, I think too, like the thing that, going back to what you said earlier about Amazon and Apple and probably eventually Spotify, is that I think what we're going to see will be somewhat analogous to what we saw with televisions, where, you had standard definition televisions where the norm, and then HD came out, and then suddenly you had football and the NHL, and James, for you had cricket, and it was like, wow, this is significantly better to watch as a consumer. And so you see in these reports, there's, 57% of responders say that they would like HD audio, however, only 5% have it today. And so I think that as this becomes more normalized and the headphones are capable of supporting it, as the streaming services are capable and just offering it for free, I just think it's going to be similar to where once people kind of see what exists and what's out there, they're not going to go back. They're going to want that HD feature, and then the standard gets raised again. And that seems to be the kind of reoccurring theme with all of these different features, is that it's basically a standardization, and that standardization keeps rising. Every single feature becomes ubiquitous. I think that we're seeing that with ANC now. Almost every new type of device that enters into the market today seems to have some level of ANC baked into it, or at least that's the trajectory, broadly speaking. And so I think that ultimately what that represents is the consumer demand is just going up. It's like increasing in its demand for higher quality features. And I think that that's going back to Andy's point, it's going to continue to lend itself to this spectrum where initially it's the true wireless headphones, and then you have like hearing aids and cochlear implants, but now everything's kind of being filled in the middle. And that's where I think this is getting really interesting is, again, we've talked about this before, Andy, is it becomes very hard to distinguish who's wearing what for what. And for me, I think that it shouldn't ever be that you should be, we live in a society where you have to hide from the fact that you have hearing loss, but I think that it might eventually just become moot because of the fact that it's going to be extremely hard to distinguish what type of headphones have that feature in them, because it's going to be such a ubiquitous type of feature. Again, from at least a rudimentary standpoint of having something like hearing personalization or enhancement, ANC, these features are just becoming more and more widespread, it feels like.
Yeah, I just want to comment on your very last point, going back to the Sonova survey. And again, this is a hearing health company, and I don't know their scale exactly, but wearing comfort was 15, the highest. Sound quality was 14. Down at the bottom, and this is consumers without hearing loss and consumers with hearing loss, they both have the same number. And visibility of device when worn is 2. And
Good.
so it's exactly to your point, is that people are wearing headphones and earphones under all circumstances. Nobody knows what they're in there for. People are accepting that they can be seen wearing them. And I think it's terrific. It's both terrific from the comfort level of wearing them, in public places. It reduces the stigma around hearing loss. You don't know if I'm personalizing my music when I'm, on the metro listening. It's the barriers are very quickly breaking down. And I think that's good on a number of different levels.
Oh, absolutely. And we talk about what we do on that continuum as well. We talk about a world-class sound experience regardless of your hearing health, regardless of your hearing profile. Because whether that's a tiny tweak for that person that's looking for that hyper edge when they're gaming or listening to music, all the way through to severe and profound loss and use them over the top of hearing aids. There's this idea that everyone deserves this high quality experience. And we use words like deserves now, which is, I think, really important. And to your point, Andy, I took my hearing aids when I went out to dinner with my wife last week. My hearing is pretty good, but they have some incredible features that make it so easy for me to hear her clearly around all the bubble. And it's a much more relaxing experience, actually, in a lot of ways. And so, because I like gadgets and I have all these different toys for these different scenarios, I think that the more people who are doing that and saying, I've always seen it more as a tip of the cap to say, oh, you're actually wearing your hearing aids. Thank you. Like, you're actually in it to hear what's going on. Like, you're in it to engage. You're in it to be part of the conversation. And, you have that classic story of, I'm not going to talk to you, Dad, unless you put your ears in, And so people who are actually using their devices, I think, yeah, that's what it's about. That's the point. That's you're getting the most out of your situation. You're getting the most out of your environment. You shouldn't have stigma for wanting to get the best out of your experience. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's, as we talk about this quality of sound scaling up, I also like to think about sound catching up, because you're looking at TVs. You went from black and white boxes, then to digital, then to wide screens, then to curved screens, then to 8K. No one films in 8K, but you've got an 8K TV, right? And then you listen out of the speakers on the TV, and it's kind of like, okay. And then you get soundbar, and that's a bit better, and then you get stuff. But you can put headphones on, you can put TV streamers to your hearing aid. You can do these other situations where people are saying, I've just spent a couple of $1,000 on this massive TV. Maybe the sound should be as good too. Maybe I should spend a little bit on getting an incredible sound experience to complement my visual experience. And the Qualcomm report, I think, made it very interesting. It was a very smartphone focused report, right? So, that was kind of the core of it. Those are the people answering the questions. But gaming, interacting, video calls. So, if you look at the screens on our smartphones now as well, it's spectacular. It's megapixels this, resolution that, and AMOLED, HD, hyper, everything.
Liquid retina.
Yeah. Oh, whoa, right? But 60% of people are using a speaker on their phone as the audio output. But what you're seeing is they're doing that, but then 60% of people are using devices more than 6 or 7 hours a day to get that optimized experience. And so I think people are saying, yeah, I want a great sound experience in my device, but that comes with I'm using a great sound device. I'm not asking my smartphone to be a great sounding speaker. And I think that, yeah, it's a catch up of audio coming into the piece, the way this whole stigma thing around hearing aids, which, kind of turns my stomach a little bit, that's still a thing. I'm wearing glasses. I've been wearing glasses since I was 10. That whole dorky Four Eyes kid thing, that was 30 years ago. Like that
Doesn't exist
not a thing
anymore.
now.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a piece of the puzzle. And I think that we're getting there and we're catching up. And it's a very positive sign of things to come.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't have said it better. Audio is actually interesting because the analogy with TV that you and Dave both made is that TV quality uniformly got better over time. You went from black and white to color, and it was analog, and then you went digital, and now you have, as you say, 4K and 8K. Audio went in reverse.
Yeah.
When mobile audio started, the audio quality suddenly was terrible. I mean, my first mobile audio device, well, a cassette tape Walkman was my first one, but my first digital device was made by Creative and had 512 megs of memory. Well, you had to compress the songs pretty far in order to fit enough music into that thing, so you could take your music library with you or a fraction thereof. And then came the mobile streaming services, all highly compressed, and you lost a lot. And even on the production end, as people started listening this way, they started contesting with each other whose songs would pop up and sound louder to you and engage you. So they started compressing the music like crazy before it left the studio.
So race to the floor.
Right, exactly. So it all went downhill, and a lot of people grew up thinking that was sound quality. But then the rest of the universe started elevating their sound. Like you said, TV sound with a sound bar sounded great. Even mid-range cars have nice audio systems in there now. And so I think people have slowly become re-educated into what good sound quality is really like and what music can really sound like. And as far as headphones go, now the technology has caught up. You have good high-res codecs, like Sony had LDAC for a while, and Huawei did all HDC, and Qualcomm did aptX Adaptive, aptX HD, and now, coincident with this report, they also announced that they can support full lossless CD quality streaming. So you have that going. You have enough battery life when you're running those codecs. You have companies like ours. We enable woofer-tweeter combinations, so you can get good sound quality in a tiny earbud out of the speaker system. So all of these things have come together to really deliver a high quality audio experience at a time when the mainstream services have made it available, where the Bluetooth streaming is now capable of delivering, and you have a comfortable long battery life device. None of this really was there until very recently. When Qualcomm says only 5% of the people currently subscribe, that's because up until a few months ago, you had to go to one of the audiophile services like Qobuz to get your HD, and they just didn't have the awareness, and they were expensive. Now you can go to Amazon and get HD, right? Or if I'm an iPhone user, I can get it from Apple. Just like nothing. And the mainstream services, and they're pushing it, right? I mean, Spotify hasn't released theirs yet, and they had that big press event with Billie Eilish and all the rest. So now consumers are very much being made aware of HD. Mainstream press are writing about it. There was an article about it in Rolling Stone extolling the virtues of HD and a good headphone to go with it, this sort of thing. So all of a sudden, like that, people are becoming more audio aware about the quality of their music, about the quality of the listening experience, about hearing protection and hearing augmentation issues. It's all coming at once. It's a very exciting time.
I was just going to say, you touched on a really interesting point right at the tail end there, talking about this hearing protection and hearing awareness piece, which is one of those elements that doesn't get as much attention, but something that I think is super important to be able to have devices in a protective environment. I mean, the UK have taken some really big steps forward around the impact of toxic noise in the workplace being a class 1 hazard now. So, people are becoming very forward thinking around, hey, we got to be looking after ourselves too. And the thing you have is this idea that hearing protection is destroying your listening experience. We've been working with orchestra musicians and we've been looking at this really high-end protection type space. And when you look at the impact of someone like a musician, and I think the adoption rates for hearing protection in live musicians is about 1% or 0.5%, which is why musicians have their horrible 4K notches and are starting to lose hearing and get tinnitus far too early in life. I mean, when it's an appropriate age to have hearing loss and tinnitus, but it's becoming earlier and earlier, but people are starting to become more aware of this protection piece and this importance of hearing piece, and not being willing to accept that I'm going to stuff a bit of foam rubber into my ear, that's not going to cut it. And so we're seeing some really great devices in that space too, that are looking at this enhancement piece, but also in a protective piece with the benefits we don't really talk about an awful lot with the noise cancelling and the safety features that has around not needing to drive things so hard. When we talk about a better, not louder sound experience. I mean, as you said, that cut through in a low quality car system was meaning you were mixing and mastering things to go to 11, because that's how the song was good, because it was loud and you got that rock impact, and that position has started to shift a bit as well. That kind of healthiness around COVID and this whole health conscious piece is finding its way into audio and the conversations people have about, wearing earplugs more often or having devices. And it's a great benefit. They're also healthier and protective too, which is a really positive stream of how we're progressing the technology.
Yeah, I would say along that vein too, you have what Apple's doing with with the Apple Watch. It has a sound level meter baked into it now, right?
Yeah, so isn't that great?
It's great. And it's because again, it just makes people aware of something that I think very few people were recognizing. I was in the dentist's office. I tell this story often where, the drill, I looked at my watch and the sound level meter was in like dangerous zone. And I'm thinking to myself, why not, if I'm a hearing professional, start targeting every single dental office in the country with some sort of hearing conservation campaign, because all of these hygienists are around these loud drills and they're wearing no hearing protection. And I think that that's just one very specific example. But along that same vein, so you have the watch has the sound level meter, and then also with just the audio output, if you're listening at dangerous levels, you'll get notified as well. So again, I think that there's something to be said about the broad impact that a company the size of Apple can have on just the general awareness of these problems. And then I think what's exciting is that the cavalry really is already here of all of these new products and solutions that exist that cater to every facet of healthy hearing, like you said. And so as we kind of come to the close here, I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts, both of you, on, for me, what's really exciting, and Andy, we've talked about this before, is it very much feels like we've sort of gone through a very important phase, which is that crucial period of the overall proliferation and adoption of generation 1 of these advanced devices. And what this report, the thing that just jumped out at me when I read this, was that everybody's already ready for the next generation of devices. And you see all the building blocks, you see what all the systems on the chips and the collaboration that Qualcomm or that Knowles and Chattable, like we talked about last time with Giles, everything is falling into place for this next generation. And for me, I think that the appetite, it really does stem before the pandemic. The pandemic really accelerated where everybody now is outfit with a pretty good true wireless headset of some sort. It seems by and large, obviously there's still room to grow. But for me, it's what's so exciting is a lot of people seem to be asking the question of what comes next, what's the next set of features to really be excited about. So I would say that here we are in September of 2021. What is the next 3 months and then into 2022 look like in your eyes? And what are the things that are on your radar right now that get you really excited about what's coming? feel free, either one of you, to jump in on that.
Well, I think for me, obviously I'm biased and the personalization piece is a no-brainer for me, but I think you really hit the nail on the head with people having this idea, and OTC and all these other government changes which are putting on the radar. Apple's putting on the radar, and I think as you're heading into Christmas time and people are thinking about, I'm going to get the best new device, or I'm going to get someone a gift, basic isn't good enough anymore. Sound coming out doesn't cut it. There's so much awareness of the amazing technology that, as you said, is already here, that I think what you see over the next 3 months heading into kind of gift giving season, people aren't going to be willing to get basic anymore. Things have to be good. They have to be next. They have to be pushing. And you'll just see that get better and better next year. A lot of the stuff in the Qualcomm report is still in its R&D phase. There are companies like me trying to get our hands on some of these new options, this new functionality. How do we take it and make it even better? So if there are companies like mine sitting around in Brisbane in Australia trying to get our hands on next gen push tech, it's going to be an incredible next year, and it's going to be an incredible next 5 years, really, with that proliferation of technology. I think it's going to be a spectacular time to be around.
Yeah, I'm really excited for what's happening in this space. I mean, if I go back to the report and look at what were the top 5 things people want: ANC, hearing enhancement, HD, context awareness, and hearing personalization. Those are all the things you need for a hearable device you're going to wear throughout your day. And they're actually all available right now. And both for ease of meetings, without cognitive overload, easy to understand, for an enjoyable music listening experience, and for hearing protection. I mean, you said something, James, about listening at lower levels. I wrote an article for World Hearing Day. It's on LinkedIn, in which I quoted 2 studies that both showed that people will listen 13 dB above the noise level. And so if you can knock down the noise level of, say, the metro or a bus with ANC earphones, you're just going to dial it down without even thinking about it. And so earphones suddenly have gone from a device which are accused of ruining your hearing to a device which will protect it. And now you can have ambient awareness, because if I still want to hear what's going on the train around me, I can still listen to my music. All these things are coming together in really exciting ways. So between the hearing personalization, the hearing protection, and the sheer enjoyment of higher quality music, it's really an amazing time right now. And in the next year, you're going to see more and more devices taking advantage of all of those consumer demand trends.
Couldn't have said it better. I think that you're so right there with this idea that people want to be able to straddle their digital acoustic environments, their ambient acoustic environments. They want to control it. They want to augment the abilities that they have. It's just a really exciting time, because it does feel like audio in the ear in particular, it's almost a head fake, in the sense that everybody kept talking about AR, augmented reality coming in the form of glasses. And however, I think that you can make a really solid argument that the real first iteration of significant augmented reality is happening with our ears. And I think that that's kind of what we're seeing right now, is everything falling in place to facilitate that, to make it so that, like I said, you can kind of control these environments simpatico, and have like layers and layers of augmentation on top of it. So really, really great conversation, you guys. Andy, James, thanks so much for joining. Thanks for everybody who tuned in here, and we will chat with you next time.